How does that person eventually become a customer? Because that's really what we're in the business of doing. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. But the first thing you need to remember is that people actually do want to meet you. Isn't that the point? Wasn't everybody very happy to meet you there today? So when you walk in and you're feeling awkward and you don't know somebody, you don't need to know somebody because everybody there is in the exact same position. And they do actually want to meet you. That's why they came there. Did you ever go to a party on a Saturday night or go to an event without your significant other for some reason and go home and say, God, that was a dreadful event, I hated it. You know, all these people kept coming up to me and talking to me. It was awful, it was terrible. No, we do want to do that, and we do want to meet people. So the point of it is to mingle and to get to know people and actually see what we can then do with that relationship and where we can take it. But to remember, as I said, that everybody does want to meet you. And as I said, really, can we try and look happy about that when we get there? Do you know the people who come into the room and because they're nervous, because they're awkward, they slide into the room this way, you know, and it's stamped all over their faces that I'm awkward and I'm feeling uncomfortable here. You've got to get your shoulders back, your head up, and that smile, get that smile on, the mega white smile on, and come into that room as if you own it. And, you know, get your head up, pause, look around, take your time and find somebody to go and talk to. And I'll talk to you in a second about how to land into a group and how to do it efficiently and easily as opposed to who is that weirdo who has just jumped in beside us and started to talk to us. So there's a way around that. But as I said, the first thing is the smile. Get that smile on and use it. Who is this delightful young man? Young Leroy the golfer. Now, if you were a sponsor and you were looking for somebody to you know, promote your product, wouldn't you go for that megawatt smile? His manager, not recently, but his manager back in the day, or very recently when he made it through, first of all, was Chubby Chandler, was it? Is that the name? Am I right? Yeah. And he sort of went on about the smile. He said he was actually going to make so much money from that smile alone because he's got it. I mean, he's youth and he's talent and he's all those other things as well, but he's got that ability to just connect that we all love. You know, as human beings, we empathise and we mirror. If somebody smiles broadly at you, it's impossible to scowl back. You actually have to smile as well. And that's what is so valuable in it. Nothing wrong with Montgomery, nothing at all. He's a very talented golfer as well. But if you were the sponsor, which one were you going to go for? Because that's the classic picture you see. And it's not his fault. He just has that intense look on his face all the time. So just remember that, the power of the smile. And also remember the idea of acting like you already kind of know somebody. And we're brilliant in Ireland for doing that. We're always tracing. We're always saying, now your cousin lived next door to my brother who went to school down the road from. We do that as naturally as we breathe. So we have to actually cash in on that and act like you know people. I call it the long lost cousin effect. If you meet people and you say, yes, and it's just good to meet you, and I know who you are, and yes, I know your business, and if you haven't met the person before, but there's always, you know, it's 6 degrees of separation in the world, it's only 3 degrees of separation in Ireland, so we can do this and we can do it well, and actually make connections with people, and find a level to connect with people on. We want to find something nearly personal about them, although this is a business relationship. You have to connect on a human level first. You have to actually find something you have in common or something you can talk about, and then you can get it onto the business conversation. But as I said, we do this naturally and we do it well. Just don't be afraid to use that effect of actually connecting with people wherever you are in business. Because the bottom line is that, you know, with the old story of familiarity breeds contempt, it doesn't. It actually makes you contacts. Being familiar with somebody and finding those connections are very powerful, and it is a way of connecting with people and doing business with people on a better level. But what happens to us when this effect occurs, this, you know, evaporation of the confidence, when you walk up to somebody and you think they're the person you met last week and it turns out they're not, and then, you know, you sort of get a bit self-conscious and it sort of evaporates and you feel like this chap here with the whole thing, the air is just being let out. How do I pump myself back up again, and how do I get to the point where I'm confident again? And why does that occur? And really it occurs for a lot of reasons. It occurs because we're awkward about ourselves, and we're awkward about the fact that we're there to do business and we're there to meet people, and we sort of lose that connection in our own head sometimes when we come in here. I know so many people who, you know, the first thing they do when they get to that room, if they can't find Johnny from accounts, what do? They head for the ladies or they head for the gents. And interestingly, a funny thing sometimes happens in there. Sometimes when you're standing up against that sink and you're washing your hands, you actually naturally start talking to the person next to you. Well, why is that? Or when you go up to the bar, you've stood around that room and you're finding it awkward, and then you go up to the bar to get the drink and you're standing next to somebody and sometimes you start talking to them. Now, I don't know what the psychological background to this is, and Donna might look it up sometime because he's so interested in this space, but there is an actual phenomenon where we will relate much better to somebody sometimes when we're side to side, or we're not front on, or we're not connecting, or we're not challenging somebody. But sometimes the side to side position is the one that makes the shoulders drop, makes us relax, and makes us start talking. And the other thing that's very interesting, there's a connection, a direct connection between working the hands and working the tongue, actually talking. So the old thing of, again with teenagers, I relate so much back to teenagers because I'm struggling with 4 of them at the moment, but when teenagers, were confronted, come down here, young lady, sit down here, I have something to say to you. I want to have a word with you. And what happens? Sit them across the table, they clam up, the whole thing shuts up, you're not going to get a word out. Driving along in the car side by side, suddenly it all starts to come out. Or the old thing Granny did at the kitchen table years ago, sat side by side with the teenager and they were like shelling peas, or they were top and tailing raspberries, or they were working the hands, and what happened? All the talk flowed. So isn't that interesting that this thing we do in society of standing up and somebody, who are you, and tell me about yourself, is so challenging to us. And sometimes when we get into a more sort of a casual side-by-side approach, then the flow starts. So when we run to the ladies and we run to the gents because we can't see somebody, you end up very often walking out with somebody. Now you found somebody to talk to, which is very interesting. I'm not advocating it, you should be able to do it in the room as well. But wherever it happens, it's going to be good because you're going to actually get to the point where you might actually make a business contact. So you've walked into the room. There's groups all over the place, little groups chatting, there's a buzz going in the room. You're the newcomer, you've landed into this networking event, you've got to be there, there are people here who you could do business with, you want to actually do the business with them, but now you're trying to decide which group am I going to land into, and how am I going to land into it. So can I have the first 3 here in the row, please? Can I ask them just to stand up for a second? You're going to be my group for a second. So the 3 of you are standing there talking away, and I've walked into the room, and I have to try and decide, is that an open or a closed group? An open group is wide open to a new person landing in, and you can land into the middle of it and start talking quite happily. A closed group is less so, and you need to learn to look at what an open and a closed group. A closed group will be standing quite close together. They will be quite square into each other, and their heads will be slightly leaned towards each other, and they will be talking like that. And they are 3 colleagues, or 3 people who came together, or they're discussing the big problem they have in the marketing department or whatever, and for that few moments they're closed. They may be open later on in the event, but for that few moments they're slightly closed. And you better maybe not go into that group. An open group will be more 3/4 in their stance, they'll be further apart. You won't be square into each other, you'll be slightly to one side, because inevitably, as we're all in an open group, what are we doing? We're rubbernecking around to see who else we might like to talk to. We're trying to hide it, but that's what we're doing. So we're in this group slightly more side on, and we're talking away, we're right animatedly there, but we're sort of keeping our bodies slightly open so we can see who else and who we might go to next. Thank you very much. So that's the difference between an open and a closed group. And if you learn to spot the open group, go for your open group, and what you do when you get to your open group, you crash land, you don't hover. Hovering is what gets us to the point where the man was the deflated man. If you hover, you're dead in the water, because what will happen is, you will see that group, and you'll come up to it, and you'll say, I think I'll join in here now, and you'll go, and they look a bit busy. I'll try again now. And you go like this, and by the time you've done that 2 or 3 times, you're dying, so you can't get into the group. So that's what I say is hover. Pause, stand, look around, find an open group, and land right in, first time. Now when you land right in, you're the stranger, you're jumping into this group, what are you going to say? You need to say something kind of interesting. And you can have a few lines planned and prepared that you can use and work for these networking events. Have them ready and have them, there at the tip of your tongue to use. The things you don't want to do are have conversations about where you park the car, or lots of weather we're having lately, or all of these things we sort of fall into when we're really stuck. We need to try and avoid those. We need to come up with a few sort of one-liners. The other one, yes, are you busy? Everybody's busy lately. Are you busy? Oh yeah, I'm busy. I'm terribly busy. I'm busy with lots on. I have lots on. I'm going to this thing tomorrow and I have that on tomorrow. We're all so busy. So we're all lying about that. We maybe are not as busy as we want to be. Some of us are, but we may not be. No, come up with a few things that work. Here's a few I came up with. A few sort of one-liners that are sort of good openers You know, and are open-ended questions, not closed questions. You know, where did you park the car is a very closed question. There's only one answer to it, you know. Think of an open question. What are you doing later on? What did you miss to get here? Now, what did you miss to get here to have to come here today? It's a really good question because it gets to the heart of somebody. Well, I had to miss my, you know, child's school play, or I had to miss the football, or I had to miss a very important presentation in the office today, but I decided to leave it to the others and come on here today. Or that answer will always elicit some piece of information that you can work with. What you're looking to do with this person is find something you can now work with and you can develop a conversation. So when you land into that group, as I said, come up with something like that. So, great to see you folks. What did you miss to be here today? And you will instantly find what is really interesting or going on in their lives, or something, as I said, that you can actually work with, which is very important. So, the next part of this is actually getting the conversation going. And I call it the name, fame, same again approach to starting a conversation. Because what you're trying to do is connect and find something that, as I said, will work, and something that will be memorable, and something that you will actually remember that person for. So obviously you want to get their name, but you're trying to find something that is what I call their fame. And it's not fame, well, it's not famous in the sense of being on telly or famous. It's fame as in what are they really energised about. And some fellas will be energised with football, it'll be golf, it'll be swimming, it'll be tennis, it'll be drama, it'll be music, it'll be books, it'll be art. There's 100 things people are really interested in, but they want to talk about. It's the thing that's at the top of their head that they want to talk about. So try and find that. Then the game is the actual business they're in, and whether that business might be something you can work with. And then finally, you know, the same. What do we have in common? Oh, we're from the same part of town. Or my sister went to that school that you went to, or whatever. There's always some connection. So find those things, because they're the things you will remember about people, rather than Joe blogs, you know, web designer. That doesn't tell you anything about Joe. You want to know what actually ticks Joe, makes Joe, you know, makes Joe tick, and makes Joe. I was thinking of something there, as I said, makes Joe tick. There was a great line in, I don't know if any of you watched The Apprentice in the South, the Irish version of The Apprentice down South a few years back, and there was a great line where one of the contenders asked Bill Cullen, who was the apprentice, the equivalent of Lord Sugar, and she said, what makes you tick? And meaning, what floats your boat? And the girl replied, oh, I get very thick when people do this and this and this. Misunderstanding of this funny, it just came to mind there as I said. Okay, so what you're trying to do is connect with people, as I said, and find something interesting about them and something memorable about them. And the next bit, of course, is remembering people's names. We all have difficulty remembering names. Anybody say they're good at it? Does anybody think they're really good at remembering names? Done it, good for you. You're the only man, put up your hand. Anyone else? Another lady down the back, another lady there. You see, very few people are confident that you will remember names. And I often think it's because we ask the name in the wrong part of the conversation. We ask somebody's name at the same time as we're touching them. It's quite an intimate thing to do with a stranger when you think about it. So I've never met you before. I'm Orlaith. Who are you?
Rodney.
Rodney, you have a lovely warm hand, Rodney. Now, that's quite an intimate thing to do. Hi, what's your name?
Brenda.
Brendan, how are you, Brenda? We've just actually exchanged names at the same moment we've actually touched a stranger. And you think, oh gosh, I wonder if my hand is sweaty there now. Or, you know, you're kind of all hung up about yourself. So maybe it's not that we don't hear names, it's maybe that we don't listen to them properly, we don't hear them because we don't take them in at the wrong, we take them in at the wrong time. I was working on a Impact, the trade union there last week had a conference, and I was doing MC, and I was presenting this particular panel discussion. So we opened it up to the floor. But when you ask people to stand up and contribute and say something interesting, you obviously want to remember their name and refer to them by name. But when the person stands up and says their name, I often think it's the wrong part of the conversation. So the woman stands up the back and she says, hello, my name is so-and-so, and I want to contribute. And I'm doing the housekeeping as she's starting, because I've got a contributor now, so I can relax for a minute, and I'm looking at my notes, who I got next, and who I'm introducing, and I'm looking at my stopwatch. I'll give her a minute now to speak, and then I'm doing my housekeeping, because I didn't hear her name. But halfway through her contribution, she said, and then the teacher in the school said to me, well, Margaret, are you going to do this? Yes, I have the name. Margaret, thank you so much for that contribution. It was very interesting. So she said the name in the right place where I heard it. And sometimes I think when we land into that group and we go, hi, I'm Orlaith, hi, I'm Rodney, hi, and we catch all the names in the wrong place. And sometimes if we land into that conversation, what did you miss to get here today, get the ball rolling, chat for a few minutes, connect for a few minutes, and say, oh, by the way, I'm Orlaith, who are you? Now you will actually remember that name because you've heard it in the right place. And you won't have heard it at a point when you're stressed about just landing into this conversation. But we're all inclined to land into a conversation with the hand out. And, you know, funnily enough, it's something we do. As I said, that's what makes it sometimes, I think personally, hard to remember names. And, you know, when you've been chatting to somebody and connecting with them really well for 5 or 10 minutes, you feel really awful then if you have to go back to the beginning and say, and by the way, what was your name again? You know, you just feel you weren't really listening to them. So that's why I just want you to think about that, the point of when you ask the name. And it might retain better if you do it slightly later into the conversation. And then a way to remember the name, think of the word face. Focus, ask, clarify, employ. So if we focus when we hear that name, if we really focus and take it on board, then you could ask something about the name. You know, Rodney, is that R-O-D-N-E-Y or is that R-O-D? If there's a different way of spelling it, or, you know, I have an Irish name, it's Orlaith, so people will often say, oh, how do you spell that? It's very unusual. And, you know, you can connect with the name that way. And then you can clarify it, as I said, get a bit more detail about it, and then employ it, then use it. Once you use the name, then it goes in and we use it. So as soon as you hear a name, try and use it as quickly as you can. And in that way, you will remember it. So you're trying to initiate conversations with these people you've met at this function, this mythical function we're at, but now you want to actually terminate the conversation because you want to move on. But you can't move on by saying, well, it's been lovely talking to you, now it's time for me to mingle, because you're saying, you know, I've seen somebody more interesting, or you're not actually, I've discovered now that you're a web designer and I actually don't have any need for a web designer, so now I'm moving on. You know, and it's a bit rude. So you want to actually initiate a conversation, but find a good way of terminating it as well. You know, with a bit of style and a bit of elegance, and move on to find the next person in the room that might be of interest to you. Sometimes it's easy to flag that you're going to be leaving the conversation as you've joined it. So you've only just joined that group, you've just started, and you might actually say in the conversation, yes, I'm meeting some people here today, and I have to talk to this person, I have to talk to them. It's absolutely lovely to spend time with you as well. So that actually makes the group you're with even feel better, because they do know you have places to go and people to do, but you're choosing to spend time with them. So, you know, that works, that's a win-win. That works for everybody. Business cards. The use of business cards and why we throw them around. Do we throw them around too frequently and in the wrong place again? In China, apparently, I've never done business in China, but I'm told in China, if you're handed a business card and you just say thanks very much and put it away, it's terribly rude. You have to take a business card and you have to honour it. You have to read it there and then in front of the person and absolutely sort of be delighted you've been handed this business card and then put it away. I'm told, maybe somebody can correct me on that. We're inclined to land into something and fire out our business cards, business card confetti. And again, is that serving any purpose? Are we really connecting with this person? What we want to do is connect with the person, remember them, find out something about them, and then we want to actually exchange our business cards if this is going to be useful to us. So one way of doing it and getting somebody's information, a better way than just, as I said, baldly handing out a business card, is to offer to do something for that person you've just met. So you've met this person, maybe they're a real mark, maybe this person is absolutely the target person you came to this event to meet, and they are actually going to be a customer. But if you've now spent the last 10 or 15 minutes chatting about, you know, sailing or whatever the person is really interested in, it's going to be very crass at the end of that conversation to turn around and say, now here's my business card because I really want to do business with you, because it looks like now you only had that whole conversation in order that you could get to that point that you could hand out the business card. So sometimes if you've had this really interesting conversation, and in fact I had a woman I was working with there a while back, and she was telling me that she's in the charity business. And one of the people she wanted to target was a very well-known business person in Dublin who is very good to charities and does donate a lot of money. And he was absolutely her target. I mean, he had tea for a target on his card when she arrived at that meeting. And she happened to get talking to him. They happened to find it something in common. I think it actually was sailing, now that I mention it. They had spoken for, like, had the most animated, lovely conversation for about 20 minutes. And at the end of it, she just completely did the confidence man, deflating. She just couldn't bring herself to ask him would he support her charity, because it would seem like she had only been schmoozing him up for the last 20 minutes for that reason. And she said, I blew my big chance. And I said, well, yeah, you did actually, but here's how you can turn it around the next time something like that happens. Have that lovely, warm conversation with that person. Connect about the school or the books or the sailing or whatever it is. And at the end of the conversation, she should offer to do something for him. She should have said, I have that fantastic book about that around the world sailor. Would you like me to loan it to you? Or, you know, I'm going into that sailing shop tomorrow, and there's this thing I'm going to get, and will I get one for you? Or find some way of giving somebody something. If it's only an email address, if it's the name of the doctor your mother attended and their mother could go to them as well, if it's the name of the chiropodist, if it's the name of the book, if it's an email, if it's an article from Forbes you read last week, you're going to love this article, I really want you to read it, can I send it to you? It's always something you're doing for them. And then tomorrow, follow up and do it. Find up that article from Forbes or Catalyst or whoever it is and email it to the person. But you have to have their email address in order to email it to it. So you have said, I'm going to do this for you. They're interested in it. Give me your email address. And tomorrow I'll send that to you. So you send them the email tomorrow. Great to meet you yesterday. Here's the article I promised you. Hope you enjoy it. Maybe I'll see you again at the next one of these networking functions. End of. Then you leave the hair sit. You leave it for a week or two. And after a week or two, then you follow up and you say, do you remember we met? And I sent you that lovely article. Of course, you're a friend now, you did something for them. Well, could I possibly come into your office and talk to you about my project that I'm working on? The chances are they'll probably say yes. Yes. So that's how you have turned somebody you've met at a networking event into a prospect, and you've got in the door and you've got the meeting. But you've done it by connecting with them as a human being first and foremost. And to me, that is the heart and soul of it all. We need to connect with people as humans first of all. And even if, in my mind, somebody in the room has T for target on his forehead, I don't want him to know that. And I really don't want to act like that. And I do want to connect on that level first of all. And the way to do it is to find things in common, chat, work it up, offer to do something, offer to send something, offer to find out some information, offer to connect them with somebody, offer to introduce them to somebody that would be benefit to them. And at the end of that then, you will actually, hopefully, have made a good contact. So to sum up very quickly, because I think we're at the end of our time, in fact we're over, remember that people do want to meet you. I call it avoiding business card confetti. Don't fire out that business card until there's a reason for it. And until, as I said, you've got something to say to the person or they have something to say to you. There's no point in just firing them around for the sake of it. You're not there to network really. We put the headline on this event as networking, but it was all a big lie. You're actually there to make friends. Think of it that way. Business friends or business associates who might one day become customers. Remember I said about announcing your exit as you enter so that you can elegantly leave the group when the time comes? Don't hover, crash land right in. Don't be that person who hesitates and keeps going back and forward and dashes off to the loo and comes back and tries again. Try and just get in there and do it. Register the names to remember them. I'm a great one for practicing this one, or say practice what you preach. I'm a great one for preaching this one. I find it very difficult myself, despite actually working with people on this all the time. Hands up, I find it difficult to remember names. It's something I constantly have to work on. Was it a hassle getting here is, as I said, one of my favourite opening questions. Name, fame, same and game. Good way of registering. And smiling and nodding like it's going out of fashion. Just keep doing it. It's the way to look open, friendly, approachable, warm, somebody would like to talk to. If you walk in looking happy, looking smiley, looking confident, people will gravitate towards you. You look like somebody it'll be fun to spend the next 10 minutes talking to. And remember that. I'll get back to you with that. Why don't I find that out for you? Why don't I send you some information? You gotta give me your email address though, and then it goes into the phone and you have it and you're done. Alright folks. Go out there and multiply. Do the business. Any questions?